Hey, this is Pastor Bunjee Garrett, and I want to take some time today to present you with another word of encouragement. Well, it's the 15th day of Black History Month, and so I wanted to take this opportunity to consider the argument of those who would have us to believe that the racist Democrats and the anti-slavery Republicans apparently switched sides, back in the second half of the 20th century. And now it's the Republicans who are the fascist racists. And listen, before you think that I'm here just to stump for the Republican Party, trust me when I tell you that I believe both parties have been hijacked by globalists who are now doing their best to demoralize our population and destroy the national borders of the United States. And while we're presented with the political choice between, the Democrats and the Republicans, listen, there appears to be a uniparty now that's actually running things as leaders from both sides of the aisle continue to lead us into a socialistic nightmare. Case in point, I want to consider the 45-point plan that was actually exposed before our House of Representatives back in 1963. For example, this communist plan to take over America, it includes the 15th goal, which aims to capture one or both of the political parties here in the United States. And as we continue to watch both parties passing spending bills that are bankrupting our nation, I have no doubt that we currently are under a uniparty which is leading us towards bankruptcy. The 16th goal for the communist takeover of the USA, it also involves the use of technical decisions within the courts, all with the plan to weaken basic American institutions by claiming that their activities violate civil rights. In this way, they're creating conflict among the races so that we're not really focusing in on what the uniparty is doing. The 17th goal for the communist takeover of our nation is to get control of the school system, and this plan was designed to use public schools as transmission belts for socialism as well as current communist propaganda. They determined to soften curriculum and get control of teachers' associations and put the party line within the textbooks, and clearly they've done this. You see, this also involves the 26th point on the plan, which includes the normalization of homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as natural and healthy behaviors. And in light of this goal, well, we shouldn't be surprised to learn that pornographic materials are found in the books in our public libraries, and many of these pornographic materials within our public school libraries promote the LGBTQIA plus movement, and so they're clearly accomplishing their mission. At the same time, we've also watched our government implementing the 28th point of this Marxist plan by eliminating prayer or any phase of religious expression within the school system, all on the grounds that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. And despite the fact that the separation of church and state is found nowhere within our nation's constitution. That being the case, we shouldn't be surprised to learn that the Marxist plan to take over America includes the 29th goal, which calls for the rejection of the American Constitution by referring to it as inadequate and old-fashioned and out of step with our modern needs. And they want us to believe that it's a hindrance. Our Constitution is a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. And so, clearly the globalists are at work to tear down our nation's Constitution. This plan also includes the 30th goal, which involves the defamation of America's founding fathers. And according to the report, the Marxists have been calling, our founding fathers selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common good of man. And not only that, but listen, the 20th and 21st goals of these Marxists, it includes the infiltration of the press, as well as the goal of gaining control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. And the 25th goal of this plan calls for the demoralization of our nation through the promotion of pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and television. Oh, and you might also like to know that the 19th point of this plan includes the use of student riots. And they want to use student riots to foment public protests against the programs or organizations which are under communist attack. And in light of this goal, well, I wasn't surprised to learn that 2 of the 3 leaders that started BLM, they're trained Marxists who have apparently embraced the 45-point plan for the communist takeover of America. That's right, the BLM movement was actually co-founded by Patrice Cullors, who confessed to being a trained Marxist, and Alicia Garza, who identifies as a queer social justice activist and a Marxist. Now, with all that being the case, I have no doubt that this organization was largely funded by Marxists who want to demoralize and destroy our nation. And there's also good reason for us to believe that these Marxists are also at work in both the Democratic and the Republican parties. Now, having said all of this, I want to return now to the topic of the big switch. The big switch, which is based on the belief that it was during the middle of the 20th century when, the Jim Crow Democrats suddenly became the party of civil rights. And at the same time, large swaths of Southern Democrat politicians then joined the Republican Party, thereby refashioning the GOP into the party promoting systemic racism. Simply put, there was some sort of big switch in politics as, the Republicans became the racists and the Democrats became the champions of the civil rights movement. Listen, if I understand it correctly, this was at the same point in time when all the cops became criminals here in America, and all the criminals became cops. Dogs became cats, cats became dogs. Christians, they all became atheists. The atheists all became Christians. And, it was just a crazy couple of years, to say the least. And, it's all Nixon's fault, apparently. Sadly, this myth of the big switch has been embraced by those who don't really mind a little historic revision. And with that being the case, I want to take some time to prove that the big switch is really just nothing more than a big myth. I should first point out that the majority of black voters here in America switched from the Republican Party to the Democrats after being enticed by the socialistic promises of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR for short. And you might not know this, but President Roosevelt refused to take a stand against the Southern Democrats who were not only enforcing their Jim Crow laws, but they were also actively lynching black Americans during his time in office. FDR admitted that he wasn't going to force the federal government to stop those Southern Democrats because he didn't want to lose their votes and he didn't want to lose his position as president. FDR also nominated Hugo Black to the Supreme Court, despite the fact that, he was a member of the KKK. He also put more than 120,000 Japanese Americans into detention camps, and he refused to welcome black Olympians, including the famed Jesse Owens, into the White House. And at the same time, FDR also used socialistic policies in order to secure the votes of black Republicans. As a result, he was able to entice black voters to leave the party of Abraham Lincoln, and in this way, FDR effectively paid black Americans to keep him in office. And listen, after his fourth term, a Democrat named Harry Truman then secured the presidency, and just like FDR, he continued campaigning with the same socialistic strategy. And as a result, many Southern Democrats decided, well, it's time for them to secede from their own party. That's right. It was 1948 when a group of Southern Democrats formed the Dixiecrats under the leadership of Strom Thurmond. And while this short-lived segregationist political party only lasted for about a decade, the majority of those Jim Crow Dixiecrats, they ended up returning to the Democratic Party from which they left. Here's how Rick Cromie explains it in his article titled "The Big Switch That Wasn't." And I quote him here, according to one historical analysis of the 1,500 plus racist Dixiecrats, only Strom Thurmond and about a dozen others left the Democratic Party for the GOP, less than 1%. That's right, less than 1% of the Democratic Party switched from the Dixiecrats to the GOP. And listen, those who did were clearly more concerned about progressive socialism of the Democratic Party than they were about their commitment to racial segregation. We should also consider the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, while the Democrats are credited with this civil rights victory, it was actually a bipartisan bill which was supported by 80% of the Republicans in Congress. At the same time, less than 70% of the Democrats in Congress actually supported this bill. And the Democrat senators who opposed it, well, they ended up filibustering the bill for 75 days. That is until the Republicans could finally muster a few extra votes that they needed to break the logjam. That's right. It was the Republicans in Congress who enabled LBJ to sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Therefore, the argument that, it was the Democrats who became the party of civil rights and the Republicans all became the racists. Listen, this doesn't really square with the historical facts. And while it's true that there are a small number of Democrats who throughout the years have switched parties, well, it's typically because they became, very upset about the socialistic policies that progressive Democrats continue to employ within their political party. And with all this in mind, it's important for us to understand that those who are still promoting the myth of the big switch, they don't really have a handle on the history of our country. Instead, they've been duped by the Marxists who want to demoralize and destroy our country. And listen, their plan also includes the destruction of the church. As a matter of fact, as we look back to the 45 goals of these Marxists, number 27 involves the infiltration of Christian churches, all with the plan to, replace revealed religion with social religion. They've determined to discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity while presenting the belief that Christianity is nothing more than a crutch for the weak. And with all that being the case, Christians of every color will do well to stop voting for these Marxists who promise the equity of socialistic utopia while enriching themselves, all in the name of social justice. Let's protect our churches against these false teachers and these wannabe tyrants who try to tell us that the government is the one who will save us. No, we don't need the government to save us. We need Jesus. We need Jesus because he's the only one who can save us. And so we should go out and share this good news with the world. And as we do, the Lord will help us to fight the good fight of faith, and all for the glory of God.